All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to tackle a really interesting and kind of fundamental question. What's the difference between what we can figure out for ourselves and what might have to be, well, shown to us from somewhere else?
I mean, it's a huge question, right? How do we know what we know? Do we just trust our senses, our own logic, our gut feelings? Is that the whole story? Or is it possible there's a kind of truth out there that you can't get to on your own, no matter how smart you are?
To get our heads around this, we're actually going to wind the clock back about 2,000 years. We're going to drop into a single, crucial conversation that's recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, where this whole idea of knowing versus being shown comes into play in a big way. So the scene is set, and Jesus kicks things off with what you could almost call a public opinion poll. He turns to his disciples and asks, "Hey, what's the word on the street? When people are talking about me, what are they saying? Who do they think I am?" He's not asking for their opinion, not yet. And the answers start rolling in. People think he might be John the Baptist back from the dead, or maybe the prophet Elijah or Jeremiah. Now, what's really key here is that all of these answers are based on human comparison. People are trying to fit him into a box they already understand. It's a totally logical, human-level attempt to categorize him based on what they've seen before. And then, bam, the pivot. He cuts through all the public chatter, looks them right in the eye, and makes it intensely personal. Okay, fine. That's what they say, but forget about them for a second. Who do you say that I am? And that's when Simon Peter steps up. And his answer is just on a completely different level. He doesn't compare Jesus to anyone. He makes this huge, definitive, theological statement. It totally shatters the mold of all the other answers. Now, Peter's answer is amazing, but the most important part of this whole story is actually Jesus' response to him. Because the next logical question is, how in the world did Peter come up with that when everyone else was stuck on earthly comparisons? And here's the reveal. Jesus basically says, "Peter, you are blessed because you didn't figure this out on your own. Your human mind, your flesh and blood didn't get you there. This was revealed to you." And right there, a line is drawn in the sand between two totally different ways of knowing something. So let's just nail down what this phrase, flesh and blood, really means here. It's not just about bodies. In this context, it's a shorthand for, well, for us. It means humanity, with all our limits and the kind of knowledge we can get just by using our own brains, our own senses, our own efforts. You can see the contrast laid out pretty clearly here. The biblical worldview often sets up this divide. On one side, you've got flesh and blood beings. That's humanity. We're from here, we're earthly, and we're limited. But on the other side, you have spiritual beings who are from a heavenly realm and just aren't bound by the same rules. And that's the absolute core of it. The text is making a very specific point. Peter's incredible insight wasn't the result of him being smarter or a better detective than everyone else. It wasn't something he reasoned his way to. It was something given to him. It was a revelation. Okay, so you might be thinking, that's a cool story from a 2,000-year-old book. But so what? Does this idea of flesh and blood knowledge versus divine revelation actually mean anything in our world today? Well, to see just how relevant it is, let's look at a famous debate that puts this exact tension on full display. It's a perfect modern-day example of two worldviews colliding, each one arguing from a completely different source of knowledge. So, in one corner, you've got John Lennox, a Christian apologist arguing from a theistic worldview. And in the other corner, you've got Richard Dawkins, a renowned evolutionary biologist and a committed atheist. It's a classic setup for a clash of ideas. So, in his closing remarks, Lennox makes this powerful argument. He says that for him, the resurrection isn't just some ancient event, it's the anchor point for all of reality. It's the one thing that proves our sense of right and wrong, of justice, isn't just a cosmic joke. And then Dawkins gives his take on the very same idea, and it's a polar opposite. He looks at the resurrection and sees it as small, petty, and frankly kind of embarrassing when you consider the sheer scale and grandeur of the universe. So there you have it. The same exact concept. Two incredibly brilliant minds, masters of logic, look at it. And one sees the key to the entire universe, while the other sees something utterly insignificant. How is that even possible? Well, if we circle all the way back to that story about Peter, the theological answer isn't about IQ points or who has better data. It suggests the divide happens because they're operating from two fundamentally different sources of understanding. The Apostle Paul actually wrote something that hits this nail right on the head.
He says a natural person, which is just another way of saying a flesh and blood person working off their own intellect, can't accept spiritual truths. To them, it just sounds like foolishness. Why? Because he says those things have to be spiritually discerned, which suggests a whole other way of perceiving reality.
So, what we're left with are these two totally different pathways to what a person might call truth. You have the flesh and blood path, which is all about human reason, what you can see, touch, and figure out. And then you have this other path, divine revelation, which is described more like needing a spiritual download to even comprehend it. And that really is the question this whole idea leaves us with. It offers one potential explanation for one of life's biggest mysteries. Why can the exact same idea strike one person as the most profound, life-altering truth, and someone else, just as smart and just as sincere, hears it as complete and utter nonsense? It really makes you think about the nature of knowing itself.